Welcome to Pod Ever After, a Once Upon a Time rewatch podcast. I'm Alana.
I'm Tessa.
And today we're going to be talking about 105 and 106. Tessa, I forgot to write down. Wait, it's That Still Small Voice. That's the name of episode 5. Episode 5 is That Still Small Voice, and episode 6, which is The Shepherd. So before we get into it, Tessa, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. I just ate a lot of food, and I'm also like a few days before the end of Camp NaNoWriMo, or whatever, however you pronounce that out loud. So I've got like 7,000 words left to write on my project, and not a whole lot of time to do it, and I'm kind of freaking out, so this is like a nice little getaway from the novelist world. Alana, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I applied to some jobs today. I'm drinking some wine, so hopefully that will make this an interesting recording. I'm trying to write a screenplay script thing that may or may not be a disaster, but that's what I've been doing. And yeah, it's humid in here, and I can't have the fan on because it'll mess up the recording. So I'm just gonna sit here with my wine and get sweaty while we talk about Once Upon a Time.
Well, we're going to be talking
attractive.
about David Nolan, so we're going to be getting sweaty anyway.
Yeah, so the sweatiness is appropriate, I suppose. Oh, and Tessa came up with, well, she didn't come up with it, but you pointed out that by the time this episode airs, so when you're listening to this, wonderful listeners, the pod will be just over a month old. And,
This
you know,
is true.
it is true, and I hate to, like, pimp ourselves out, but we would like to have a few more listeners. We're starting to get some faithfuls that I love. But I want to get a few more people because it feels like we're talking to nobody. Although I guess people are listening to it because the tracks on SoundCloud have hits. But you should tell your friends, your fandom friends, if you're listening to this and you're enjoying it, because it helps motivate us to keep doing this.
And like, if you need anything to be like, well, when do I listen to a podcast? I've got ideas for you, so you can come message me, and I'll be like, let me help you. I got ideas.
Woo! Oh, and also, I posted today, it's on our Tumblr, I posted, so when you hear this, it'll be a few days previous, but I posted one of our Get to Know Your Hosts posts, rhymed, from some Anon questions that were really funny, and I did a little recording of myself answering questions, because I think I'm hot shit or something, but I did that today, and it was fun, and Tessa will be posting hers soon, which I'm sure will be nicer than mine.
That's a lie. But anyway, so getting into it, I'm going to start off by giving you a little bit of an idea of what happened in this episode, because this one is the Archie-centric episode, and if you're like me, I completely forgot what the heck was happening. Like, I was like, oh, this is the one with the cricket. But rewatching it, if you can get over the fact that, like, you want to know more about Emma Swan and you want to know more about what's going on with David and Snow, it's actually pretty interesting. So the episode starts out and we discover that Archie is traveling around with his puppeteer parents, who are terrible people because they con people all the time. And he's just a really big pushover, and he's helping them steal things. And eventually they do one of those transitions where he comes out of the little puppet place and he's a grown man all of a sudden. And you're like, you're still a grown-ass man and you're still stealing. And so he goes through that whole thing where he tries to be a better man, but he ends up turning that lovely couple into puppets that are horrifying and never see the light of day again. And in Storybrooke, Regina abuses Henry just a little bit more. Because what's an episode of season 1 Once Upon a Time without Regina treating her son like crap? And it pushes him to make his therapist make him cry. So essentially she tells Archie, listen, you need to tear the hope out of my son. And so Henry is devastated, and he acts up by going into the mine in Storybrooke and Emma, being the awesome deputy she is, helps save him while Regina stands on the sword. More on that later. And there's some foreshadowing because Regina is hiding a glass coffin, which we've never seen before. Huh. So, Alana, you didn't love this episode.
No, I mean, there's a few episodes this season where they just kind of like, it seems like they're just establishing the world, and so they do a bunch of episodes about side characters that we never see again. If it turned out that Archie ended up being in more episodes and playing a bigger role, I might have appreciated episodes like this more, but knowing what we do now and how little they pay attention to Archie later on, I'm just kind of like, eh. Like, there is some good stuff in it, but I wasn't crazy about it, so Tessa's gonna take the reins on this one a little bit, because I didn't have that much to say. I was obsessed with, like, one, really silly part that I couldn't stop talking about, and that was, like, the only thing that I had to contribute for this episode.
Well, so unlike Alana, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought that the writing was pretty good because, you know, in later seasons, we have a couple episodes of side characters that really just, like, I could barely watch because they were just so boring. This one, I felt like was written better than some of the side character episodes that we've gotten more recently. And I was like, man, like, the dialogue is good. I was like, Archie's, you know, kind of a crappy guy, but he's still an interesting character. I was like, this is pretty unusual for Once Upon a Time writers who wrote it. And of freaking course, it was our queen, our goddess, our Lord and Savior, Jane. How do you pronounce her name? Espenson?
Probably Espenson.
She wrote a lot of the really nice Captain Swan episodes. I think she wrote that episode where Hook asks Charming for his blessing. So she's got a reputation in the fandom, in the Captain Swan fandom at least, for being, you know, pretty good at what she does. And I gotta say, I agree. So I called that one.
Okay.
So,
well, okay, how about I'll start with, this happened fairly early on in the episode, so I'll just get into it right away so Tessa can get into the actually important content-heavy stuff of this episode. So, Mary Margaret and David are flirting, and she's visiting him in the hospital since he's been awake, and they're playing Hangman, where he makes her guess her own name, which, real smooth. But they're talking, and I don't know if it's just because she's nervous or what, or it's just like, you just said, like, this episode has really good dialogue, but this was just so dumb to me. She asks David, she's like, oh, did you play a lot of Hangman before? To which I said, one, he had just told her that he doesn't remember anything, so how would he be able to answer that question? And two, who plays a lot of Hangman?
Like, you're stuck in a...
Like, who has a hobby that's like, oh, you know what I really like to do in my spare time? I just love to make people play Hangman with me. And, like, for, like, this is how boring this episode was to me. For, like, 5 minutes after that scene, I just kept thinking about this throwaway line of dialogue, because I just thought it was so terrible. And I don't know if it was in the script, or she just ad-libbed or what, but it's just really bad. And that's, like, probably going to be my biggest contribution when we talk about this episode.
I feel like maybe there's a possibility they wanted her to kind of be, like, nervous in the way that, you know, she's talking with this guy that she likes, and she's trying to get to know him more, but how do you get to know a guy that doesn't know anything about himself? And so it kind of just reminds me of times, like, that I've asked guys I've had a crush on, like, do you wear sweaters often? Like, what kind of question is that? And then they kind of look at me like... yeah, we're living in one of the coldest cities in the country. Of course they wear sweaters often. So
like,
I
do
feel
you, like,
snow.
go to the bathroom a lot? Like, like, hey, do you like to shower often? I mean, like, I don't know. It was so silly to me.
One of the other, this is going a little out of order with our outline, but I think I'm going to do it for the sake of humor and comedy. One of the other little things that we pointed out was that, so Geppetto, as a character, has this beautiful Italian accent. We hear it when he sings. We hear it when he talks to Archie. We hear it when he just is doing his thing.
We should remind people, because we're jumping out of order, because we totally forgot about this when we started the episode, is that the little boy whose parents get turned into puppets because Archie is an asshole are Geppetto's parents, which, like, I totally didn't remember until it happened in the episode. And I just want to remind people that the little boy that he screws over is Geppetto with the lovely Italian accent.
And I don't know if they ever, like, tell Geppetto, like, hey, remember that guy that ruined your life? Well, he's also your best friend. I apologize, that was bad summarizing on my part. But anyway, so we know Geppetto has that Italian accent. Well, in the flashbacks, he's just this little kid. This tiny little American kid. And we're like, what? Did he just, the curse bring him over and then he just spent like a summer in Italy and came back with an Italian accent? I want to know.
It was so funny. The text was really funny, because when Tessa and I watched the show, we're generally texting during an episode, and I just get this dead-ass, like, deadpan text. Tessa is just like, that kid doesn't have a fucking Italian accent, which, like, just in my head it sounded super serious, and, like, how dare this kid not have an Italian accent, because his name is Geppetto, which is a super Italian name, and it's just, you know, it's silly, it doesn't really matter, but it's really funny that, as a child, he just sounds, you know, American as apple pie, and then for the rest of the show, he's basically like Dean Martin on steroids for the rest of the time.
Okay, so...
But we should you get into the serious stuff that you thought was interesting in this episode.
So Alana actually had somewhat of like an epiphany about the whole show after seeing this episode, because, you know, in this episode we see Archie interact with Rumple, and we've seen a few characters interact with him in similar ways, and we also see that throughout the entire series with people making deals with him. So Alana, what did you find out about that? What did you discover?
Okay, so something that I happened to notice about this episode is that Rumple seems to be the natural consequence of characters who cannot admit to their own failings. So a character does something that's their own fault, essentially, and they really put very little effort into fixing the problems themselves, and then they kind of fall to their knees in front of Rumple and make a larger mistake, which is actually really interesting because Rumple ends up being kind of the quintessential example of this himself. He blames every single other person he encounters for his problems instead of himself. Even the fact that he's, you know, like, he's technically kind of possessed by darkness, he generally blames the curse for what he does. So I thought that was really interesting. And so I had a few questions in our outline that, Tessa, maybe you could answer some of these. So I said, why do we care about stories where people fail to meet their own expectations of themselves? And does the show succeed or not succeed? In terms of that question.
I would say that we care about characters who we want to root for the characters. I mean, when I started watching Once Upon a Time, really at the beginning, when I was really young, I was watching because I really liked Rumpelstiltskin. I really liked the story of Beauty and the Beast, and I wanted to see him get better as a character, because that we'll see later. I think it's coming up pretty soon, but he's got an episode with Belle where we see that hint of goodness in him. And as a viewer, I wanted to see him meet his own expectations. But of course, no journey is, you know, smooth sailing, so he's gonna fail to meet those expectations, albeit like way more than he needs to. But I think it's just, you kind of want to have that sense of completion to be like, okay,
yeah,
he finally figured out what the heck he was doing. He's the man he wants to be. And so they care about, I mean, even though they fail and disappoint us consistently and constantly, I think that's the ultimate goal for both the character and the viewer.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a very, like, I think they're playing into a very primal, I don't know about primal, but instinctual and common problem of being a person, is that we all have these ideas in our head of the kind of people we want to be, and we try to meet that goal, and very often we fall short of it, and, you know, how far are we willing to go to meet those ideas? And it's really interesting that they're considering the idea of the self and not the actual self, because it's a show that's modeled after fairy tale characters or fairy tale stories that are frequently very unreal. Like, the kind of happy ending that Prince Charming and Snow White have traditionally is unrealistic. No one's happy ending is going to be perfect. And so I think there's a lot of conflict in this show where the characters are running up against walls of perfection, and I feel like I've actually written fanfiction about this idea of trying to kind of navigate the tension between characters later on, especially between Emma and Killian, because they're true love. And it's like, what do you do when you have this ridiculously high standard set for yourself in your relationship that you see maybe, you know, Prince Charming and Snow White, and they have this amazing epic love story, and they're going to be together forever, and if you're comparing yourself to that, like, is that a good idea to do that? Is that healthy for your relationship, or should you just kind of embrace the imperfection? And I kind of see that starting in these very early episodes, which is really good. I have to, you know, however much I critique them, I'll tip my cap to the writers for kind of starting it here.
Yeah, I'd agree. So I mean, really, I think that's it for this episode. I mean, I noticed something else, but did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Not really. I mean, I think you should talk about because I don't agree with this observation, but you should plow forward with it, and we'll see what everyone else says.
Okay, actually, I have two things. I didn't scroll enough. But, so, I am Killian Jones obsessed. If you had not noticed, if you follow my blog, that makes itself very apparent. But, so I'm constantly finding ways that Killian is similar to everyone on the show. Like, I don't think I feel like just being a human and just existing, he is similar to people. But there's a scene in the episode where Geppetto is sitting in this elevator shaft with Henry, and
wait, not Geppetto, Archie. She means Archie.
That is oh my lord! I'm just gonna crawl out the window. Okay. Anyway, I was thinking about Killian, and my brain walked away with my heart. Sonny, Archie is sitting in an elevator underground with their oxygen running out, and Henry asks Archie a question. I almost said Geppetto again. About, you know, he asks him something that makes Archie think about himself, and essentially what he says is, he wants to achieve the man he wants to be. Like, he says, quote, "the man I want to be," and I can't remember exactly what it was in context to, but my brain was like, oh, Killian said that one time. He knows what man he wants to be. And so that was one of the ways that they were similar, so I was thinking about that a little more. And I kind of put some pieces together and decided that both Killian and Archie struggle to be set free from their thieving pasts. Both of them kind of go a little back and forth, you know, with, like, they do some good, and then they do some bad, and then they do some good, and then But Alana kind of capped it with that Killian goes after his redemption with a bit more passion and determination, as where Archie is a bit more hesitant. And he redeems himself by looking over Geppetto, but he doesn't, there's no, like, contextual proof that he actually says, I screwed up, Geppetto, I killed your family. Sorry about that, bud.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know does Geppetto know that Archie is responsible for that? I don't think we ever find that out or know that.
No. But
because I'm not sure if, like, Jiminy showed up to this crying tiny child's house and was like, oh, by the way, I'm the creepy redhead that got your parents turned into puppets, or if it was something he ever told him about. Yeah, I mean, my whole thing with comparing Killian to other people is that I am very much in the Killian stands alone camp in terms of how strong of a character he is, and that could just be because we've seen so much of him.
Yeah.
And they spent so much time devoted to his backstory, but it's hard. I find a hard time comparing him to other characters. I feel like he's very much in his own league, but again, that's probably very much because he's got more screen time.
I just was thinking of it in reference to that season 6 moment that we have with the two of them where Killian confides in Archie, and Archie is very adamant about Killian chasing after his happy ending. And I think that maybe Archie sees a little bit of himself in Killian, who's struggling to be the man he wants to be, because Archie was there once.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I was going with that. And the last
and it's too bad. I mean, like,
oh, never mind. Sorry.
No. We should wrap up this episode anyway. So go on to the last thing.
Well, the last thing I noticed, because I'm always looking at Emma and Regina's parents. So imagine that Emma and Regina sit down for a test in, like, school or something. And they both have the same question. They have 2 answers to choose from. The question is as follows. Your son, Henry, gets himself into trouble again and must be saved. You decide to blow up the opening in the cave that will give you access to him. As the smoke clears, what do? A. Run in after your son to see if he's okay, or B. Stand around and wait for someone else to do it so you don't get dust on your sensible pantsuit. So, Alana, what would you answer?
I would say that if you loved your son as much as you claimed, you would be the first one in there. I will say that Regina does want to be lowered down into that pit. But still, her parenting persona in this episode is not great. She pushes Henry at one point, we noted. I've been paying a lot of attention now to, like, their body language because of when we noticed that she grabbed him in that earlier episode. She does push him at one point in this episode, which is weird. I mean, not weird, it's expected, I guess, but I do agree that Regina's a terrible parent. I would also agree that the engineers in this town are also terrible, because who in their right mind? Like, you have 2 people trapped in a mine. Like, I don't know if people know this, but this happens. People get trapped in mines. You don't just, like, blow up the mine and hope that it, like, frees them, because a mine is full of empty spaces and weak walls, and if you blow something up, it will collapse again. And they have no idea where Henry or Archie are in the mine, and they just blow it up. This is another thing that, like, I don't know why I'm paying attention to this, but, like, they're just like, I have an idea. Let's put sticks of dynamite in the doorway of the already weak mine and blow it up, even though we have no idea where. Like, they could be, like, on the other side of the wall. Like, it's just bad decisions all around.
So,
terrible rescue team.
Needless to say, Regina did not pass the parenting exam, and the engineers did not pass the explosive exam. They just failed. You all get F's.
Failing all around, except for Emma and Henry.
Who are too
everyone
good for
else
this world.
Has bombed in this episode, which is a pun. A good pun. A good pun to end the note on 105. And we will be back with 106, which we actually weren't going to watch the same night, and then I realized that 106 was The Shepherd, which is a David-heavy episode, and I convinced Tessa to stop her feverish writing and watch another episode with me.
I am a weak woman.
So we will return in a moment with episode 6, The Shepherd. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Hello everyone, we are back. This is Alana again, in case you haven't gotten used to the melodious sound of my voice yet.
And I'm Tessa!
Tessa's here. And Tessa's here too.
Yep.
So we're back to talk about 106, The Shepherd, which I, for one, am very excited about.
Alana was born to summarize this episode, so please, by all means,
I was born for it. Okay. So in the Enchanted Forest, we find out that David has a twin brother, who at this point we all know is a dick, but not a dick yet. In this episode, he's not a dick. He's just kind of good at sword fighting. His father, King James, uses David uses David to slay a dragon and get gold, but then he's forced into a marriage with Abigail.
Wah, wah, wah.
And then in Storybrooke, in Storybrooke, Regina messes around with people's lives, while at the same time warning them that they are going to wreck other people's lives, which I think is hilarious. So then, as Henry very astutely points out, and I thought this was really interesting, because David was in a coma, his mind is essentially a blank slate. So at this point, he's poised. Depending on what he sees or what triggers him, he could either remember the Enchanted Forest and be Prince Charming, or he'll remember the fake alternate universe that Regina has created. So, unfortunately, as we know, because Regina is a meddling bitch, David sees a windmill and remembers a fake life. Mary Margaret gets her heart broken, of course, and makes bad choices, and as we know, ultimately decides to sleep with Whale.
Oh, nasty.
He's gross.
Nasty.
Well, yeah, so that's 106. There's a few things to talk about in this episode. We're going to talk about David the most.
It's a David-centric episode, so that's the plan. That's okay.
Yeah, so that's the plan, so it's fine. I will let everyone know that I'm in full sweat at this point, so just as we anticipated, I am primed to talk about Josh Dallas in this episode. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I made a post about it, but most of our text message conversation for this episode was just all in caps lock, screaming about how handsome he is and getting distracted by his handsomeness from the content of the actual episode. So
it took away our ability to spell.
That's why. That happens to me with Emma, too. There'll just be a really pretty shot of her hair or something, and I forget what I was supposed to be thinking about. So what do we talk about first? So
just start right at the beginning.
One of the first thing... So yeah, let's just start at the beginning. So at the beginning of this episode, they throw a party for David because he gets released from the hospital. And my first comment was, why the hell would you force a man with no memory into a room full of strangers? That doesn't seem like a good idea to me. And this is how we know Whale's a terrible doctor. He's like, this will be really good for him. I'm like, yeah, he looks really happy to be here with all these people he doesn't know. That was my first comment. And then the second one, which one of my favorite things about David Nolan as a character is that he's an amazing dad. And I was just like, he meets Emma, and I'm like, how does he resist hugging her and cupping the back of her head with his beautiful hand like he does every time they hug each other? And then, I forget what the idea was, but Tessa started giving me ideas for Captain Charming, which is super inappropriate, but I don't remember what it was. Do you remember?
No, I thought you were gonna know. I don't know.
I don't remember what it was. I think I still have our conversation from that night on my phone, but it's real far back there. Wait. I'm scrolling back now. This is a funny conversation. Oh, wait. Well, you had one. Wait.
I'm waiting. I'm not going anywhere.
Sorry, going. Scrolling back. I'm sorry.
Also, if you have not noticed, Alana lives, breathes, and sweats Captain Charming.
So
in
bad.
More ways than
it
one.
Was not. I barely cared about it 2 months ago, and something happened, and now it's the only thing I could think about. Anyway, okay, so here it was. I said, I think it was the scene. Oh, it was the scene when it's James and he's wearing the armor, and you said you should use this scene for some sort of CC gift set, and I said, LOL, thanks, I'll think about it.
I'd like to apologize for Alana's use of the word GIF, because we all know it's GIF.
It's GIF. We all know it's GIF. I didn't say GIF.
I swore you just said GIF. I'm sorry.
When I re-listen, if I hear myself say GIF, I'm gonna throw myself off a building. Anyway, that happened, and then... So the other funny thing...
So, James finishes his epic sword fight or whatever, or maybe it's right after he fights the dragon. But one of the brothers has a victory. I think it's right at the beginning after the big burly guy. And Abigail's father, so. King Midas, who in mythology can turn anything to gold that he touches. So he goes, hand me your sword. And then the king is like, oh, here is the sword of my son. And then Midas puts his hand on it, and then it turns to gold. And of course, my first thought is not, wow, that's pretty freaking cool. My first thought is, that's bad for inflation.
And I was like, I'm just like, don't they know that if everything is gold, then nothing is gold?
This is enchanted forest
I guess that's
economics.
why he keeps his
101.
I guess that's why he keeps his magic hand inside a glove, so that, you know, they can control the influx of, they can control the value of their currency, because if he touches everything, then the entire system would just collapse in on itself. Midas is a really touchy figure for capitalism. Anyway.
That's really punny, and I hate you for it. Is a touchy figure.
That's 2 puns. I made
gold.
2 puns in this episode.
See, originally Alana was like, there's gonna be no puns. We're gonna be making no puns. And I was like, that's wrong. There's definitely gonna be puns in this entire podcast. Anyway. So on a less happy note.
Yeah, on the less happy note, there was a really intensely violent moment in this episode that I was not prepared for, because I feel like it's the last time that it happens. So James dies because he's not paying attention, and the big burly man that he thought he killed is actually alive. And he jumps up and he stabs, he like shoves a spear through James's chest, and it's this very viscerally violent moment. Like, you see blood and it like spurts and stuff, and I texted Tessa and I was like, I think this is like the most violent thing I've seen. And of course Tessa, with her one-track mind, is like, Killian's gotten stabbed a bunch of times, and I'm like, yeah, but like, it's not like when he gets stabbed, like, you don't really see blood or anything. It's just you see Colin's sad face because he's been stabbed again, but you don't like see anything.
Excalibur has a little bit of blood on it.
Not real, like, not compared to this. This is like he's like a sucking chest wound after he gets stabbed, and like, you never see it again. And it's like, it's the same thing in this season. Is it this season or next season? We get like the sex scene with Snow and David too, but we even get like fucking Emma with her shirt unbuttoned, and we see her in a bra and stuff. I was like, I don't know if they were like, if they thought the audience changed as the show went on, but.
I think that's exactly
really
what
graphic.
happened.
Yeah, that must be what happened, which is a bummer. I'm sick of young people ruining things.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Tessa. So,
in the face of this tragedy, there was in the face of this tragedy, there was a miracle. And Alana, tell them what it was.
There was a miracle. The miracle of this episode is David's terrible wig, which everyone on the show at least once must endure a terrible wig, but this is truly one of the most terrible. So we see David at his height, you know, his shepherd height, and he's got awful, almost shoulder-length hair and kind of a patchy beard, which I thought was makeup at one point. I could not tell if it was real or not. But regardless of the terrible wig, it's really amazing. And there's really nothing else to say. There's no deeper meaning. It's just a terrible wig.
I think
with Josh's handsome face inside the terrible wig, which is funny.
I once almost dated a guy with hair exactly like that. And
oh, that's terrible.
And he didn't have the cute face to go with it either. He wasn't Josh Dallas. So it only lasted about a week.
So there's a few things we could talk about this, but I feel like this episode is running kind of long. I mean, not really. We have some more time. Wait. So what I want to talk about is Anna from the stupid Frozen arc that ruined everything. Whatever, Tessa.
They're not gonna know who you're talking about. They're gonna be like, Anna. Who the heck is Anna?
Why do I have to say Anna? Okay, you know what? Whatever.
It's
so apparently,
Swedish.
when we find out in season 4 that Anna has met David in another at another point in time, and she, like, kicks his butt, basically, and makes him realize that he has to fight for what he wants, which, again, is a common theme. And so I'm thinking, is she supposed to have met him before this whole thing happens and James comes? Yeah, right? She's supposed to have been there beforehand, and, like, it's... And so it was weird to me that, like, someone hands David the sword, and he's like, oh, like, what's this? And I'm like, shouldn't he know exactly? So it was just another instant of, like, a very gaping, like, glaring plot hole from the stupid Frozen arc that they shove into this show for no goddamn reason. Well, just for money. That's why they shoved it in there, for money. So that was stupid. And then, so we'll finish talking about two things. So one thing that they kind of stopped doing, which I'm sad about, but there's so many shots in season 1 of Emma eating food. So she's, like, nibbling on a bear claw, or she's drinking hot chocolate and, you know, swiping her finger through the whipped cream and all that really cute stuff. And so as an English major, I overthink everything. And usually when there's food in media, so in a movie or in a book or whatever, it's generally a sign of, like, gluttony or selfishness or some kind of extravagant indulgence. And so I kind of really like that there are just these moments of Emma just really enjoying the food she's eating, which I think is a really interesting character trait because as the show goes on, she kind of gets more and more selfless, which worries you because you're like, Emma, care about yourself and, like, eat the bear claw and eat the hot chocolate, drink the hot chocolate. And we see it kind of a lot in season 1, and then it kind of fades later on, which they're probably not even thinking about.
You know what, though?
It's something I noticed.
It does come back. Like, as she settles into her domestic life with her son and her husband, well, her partner, who then becomes her husband, like, she... Like, with the melty milk duds and ordering Chinese and getting grannies.
Oh, yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't catch that. I mean, it like, comes back.
I totally didn't think of that.
I mean, they're always eating at Granny's.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're right. That's great.
God bless.
What a good connection we just made. Good team.
Good job, team.
Yeah, like, so yeah, if you guys will remember, in season, like, so, yeah, in later seasons, there's a lot of family dinners at Granny's, but I always kind of read that or watched that as, like, oh, she has a family and they're eating together, that's the thing, but you're right, like, Killian brings her the onion rings.
He does.
And then... He does, he brings her, and she's like, oh, good, I'm just texting you, so he's, like, related to the food, so, like, to me, like, that's a big part of their relationship, is that that's how she allows herself to be selfish, is that she chooses him, and she has him, and that's, like, her kind of selfish impulse. It's like, this is mine. This is the thing that's going to be mine that no one is going to take.
Also, ladies...
And so, like, yeah, so...
ladies, get yourself a man who will... Or a lady. Get yourself a man or a lady. Or a non-binary pal who will get you food. That's how you know they are A+ partner material. It's
really true. The man that I am marrying, one time I got pretty drunk, and I really wanted bar food from a place in town, and he called it in and drove there and picked up, like, chicken tenders and french fries for me, and it was great. And so I stand by that statement. Be with someone who will buy you food. Go out of their way. It's good. So yeah, that was really interesting. I like that breakthrough. And then the last thing that I thought we could talk about, so I'm sorry, I don't know if people will stop listening to me because of this, but I don't care about snowing that much.
But I do, so don't leave.
And Mary Margaret. But Tessa really likes them. I don't not like them. I just have very little, like, I'm very neutral on the whole thing. And I don't know if that's because we know they're going to end up together, or there's no real challenge for them. Like, they show them in challenging situations, but I feel like in the back of my head, I'm like, at the end of the day, they're going to be together because it's Prince Charming and Snow White. Or if it's because I never really connected with Snow that much. But Tessa, I know you really like them, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think I probably have an easier time relating to Snow than you do. I feel like I have probably just a bit more in common with her than I do with Emma. I'm also a very hopeless romantic. So you will find me, and Alana is constantly judging me for my taste in books and movies and TV shows that I watch and read just for the sake of having a really cheesy romance to cry with. So I really like that, the security of the relationship, where even though they do go through a couple tough scrapes, like even, you know, where she's got to crush his heart and cast a curse, like they, at the end of the day, you know that they're gonna be okay, because that's the whole point of the show, is that he will find her. He'll always find her. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like, I am a very romantic person. Like, I love romantic things. It's just not, it doesn't grip me the way, like, Captain Swan does.
I think you like things that are a bit more realistic.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess that's it. Maybe that, I mean, like, I don't know what it is. A big part of it might be Snow, because I really love David's character, and I, like, want to be invested in his love story, and, like, maybe that'll change with the rewatch, and if I watch it more and pay more attention to Snow, it'll change, but it was just, like, funny, because we were watching this episode, and, like, I kept getting texts from Tessa, like, oh, it's the snowing thing, it's the snowing this, or whatever, and I was just like, I don't really care that much, and I felt bad that I didn't care that much, but, yeah, that was basically The Shepherd. I mean, we basically covered it.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll be back, in 2 weeks, and you'll be proud of me, I actually have the episodes up this time. It's The Heart is a Lonely Hunter and Desperate Souls. That's 7 and 8 of season 1. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and Tessa, do you wanna take us out?
Yep. So thank you again for listening to us ramble on about our crazy things, and we hope you live pot ever after.